One day, I received a call from a neighbor of mine named Suzanne, and she attends the UU Church in Pasadena. And she had just met a family who had moved to Los Angeles as refugees from Syria. She met them through her church. And she thought to call me because they had a baby who was just about the same age as mine. And she asked if I had a jumperoo to give to that baby. And just by a show of hands, anybody ever heard of a jumperoo? Okay. Anybody, raise your hand if you have ever lived with a baby. Okay, yeah, there's a lot more hands. Okay, put your hands up. So a jumperoo, I call this, it's the baby operating control center. It's the perfect thing for a baby who is not yet old enough to sit up on their own, but they want to be upright. And for this mom from Syria, her baby wanted to be upright. He was 5 months old, and he had been in her arms for 5 months. So the jumperoo is basically a thing that you stick the baby in, and they're surrounded by toys, and it holds them, and a lot of times there's lights and music, and of course I had one. Suzanne, do you have a jumperoo? Yes, of course. Can I give it to this family from Syria? Absolutely not. I need my jumperoo. If I don't have my jumperoo, I won't survive the afternoon. But I understood what the need was. I could imagine why this mom would need that. And I just want to point out that Suzanne didn't call me and ask if I could start a nonprofit organization. I immediately said, I'm going to find a jumperoo, but she can't have mine because I need it desperately. I went onto a Facebook group for moms in my neighborhood, and I asked if anybody had a jumperoo that they were done with that we could give to this nice mom from Syria. And as one would expect, within 20 minutes, there was a response from one of my neighbors. She said that her son had just stopped using his. As soon as babies walk or crawl, they don't want to be in a jumperoo anymore. So it's something that is a critical need for a very short window of time. That weekend, I went with Suzanne, who brought a box of diapers and wipes, and I brought this jumperoo. I went to go visit the family. They lived just 20, 30 minutes away from my house. And going there, just to put you in my shoes, I had no experience understanding what refugees go through when they come to the United States. Really, the only information that I had was, this was 2016, and this was shortly after a picture of a baby boy had washed up on the shores of Greece. And I see many people nodding their head. Of course, we remember that picture. It stopped the whole world. We were grieving this baby together. And I knew how horrible the situation was for families coming from Syria. And that was what I knew when I went there. And then the other thing I knew is that I was going to figure out how to build this jumperoo in their house and get the baby in it. And so when I arrived, I didn't even really, introduce myself or look at them. I just kind of kicked my shoes off at the door and looked around the room to find a place to set up this jumperoo, which is quite large. It's a big thing. You need a big space for it. And I remember when I was scanning the room thinking, isn't it interesting? All of the corners of this room are empty. So I just picked the closest one. And I started putting the pieces together because it comes in like 600 pieces and you have to assemble it using engineering skills that I didn't quite have. And then once I had it all assembled, with this laser focus on my one goal, I'm looking around the room, and as I expect, the baby is in his mom's arms, and I'm walking towards her, and she doesn't speak English. I don't speak Arabic. Now she speaks pretty good English, and I speak very bad Arabic. And we just kind of had this conversation with our eyes where I was holding my arms out and, intending to take her baby, and she was looking at me thinking, who are you? Why are you trying to take my baby? And it was this gentle moment of awkwardness and curiosity. And I walk over and I stick him in the thing, and It's me and Mom and Dad and Suzanne, and they also have 5-year-old twins, and we're all kind of standing around this baby in a circle, watching him discover. And we've all done, how many, raise your hand if you have watched a baby discover a new piece of gear. Yeah, it's like trial and error, where the toes touch the ground and then they realize they can bounce. And it was so familiar to me because my baby was the same age and I had just watched him do this. And now we were watching somebody else's baby do this. And he accidentally kind of turned his body and his hand hit a toy and the music started playing and he started to laugh. And it was infectious. We all started to laugh. And it broke the ice between us in a way that happens with parents when we identify one another through the love for our children. And the awkwardness was still there, but we sat down on the floor and we had a picnic. And they served the food that they had, which was Cheerios and apples and bananas, and the most delicious tea I had ever had until that day. I didn't understand a lot of the conversation that was happening around me, and I was with this very full heart from being able to say that I accomplished my goal that day, but it felt so weird to be there. And at one point, I was like, I have to excuse myself because this is so awkward, I just need a break. So I went to the bathroom, and I didn't have to go. I just needed to be alone for a minute. And I was looking at myself in the mirror and talking myself through this awkward moment and telling myself to relax. You can just relax. You know, you get to go home after this to your house that's full of, you know, all the things that are familiar to you, and you can listen to your music in the car home, and so you can just be relaxed. And I went in there truly to serve myself. I was like, I need help to get through the rest of this visit. And while I was looking at myself in the mirror, I saw behind me the reflection of a towel bar that looked like every towel bar I had ever seen. But the thing that caught my eye about it is that there was no towels on it. And then I just had my mind wandering. I was like, where are their towels? And I looked back at the sink and I noticed there wasn't toothbrushes or toothpaste next to the sink. And I was like, huh. And my mind shifted from how do I make myself more comfortable in this situation to wondering what the situation was for that family. Because I was looking in the bathroom and it looked like a vacant bathroom in an empty apartment. But I knew that they had been living there for 3 weeks. I opened up the shower door. There was no shampoo or bubble bath. When I left the bathroom, my mindset had completely changed. I recognized that the family that I was visiting needed a lot more help than just that jumperoo. And not being able to have a conversation with them, I called in some help. I called my friend Luai, who speaks Arabic and English and Hebrew and like 5 other languages, and he was our interpreter over FaceTime. And he convinced them, though he had never met them, he convinced them to be very vulnerable with me and walk together around their house with him there on FaceTime and open every drawer and every cabinet. And I had a notebook in my purse that day, and I wrote down a list of 42 things that that family needed to get their home set up to be safe and functional for their family. Driving home that day, I was, in the midst of this adventure of meeting new people, discovering new needs, discovering this whole world that was happening outside my life. I had 2 kids under age 3. I was very busy. I was in my own kind of personal state of survival. But once I recognized that this family had needs that were really unreachable for them. You know, the things on that list were like a mattress for the crib, towels for the bathroom, garbage bags, furniture, a laptop for mom and dad so they could work on their resumes and get jobs. You know, these are like big things, small things, but basic things that really all of us need to be able to just function in our day-to-day life. And I wanted to, instead of go home, I wanted to drive to Target and just buy everything and put it on a credit card and just be like, oh, I'll figure it out later. I don't know how I'll pay for it, but at the time, I was on a single income. And luckily, I had another side of my brain convinced me not to do that. It wouldn't have been responsible. And so instead, I went home and I opened up my Facebook group again, the one for moms in my neighborhood, and I typed the list in. And I asked if anybody had items on that list that we could give to this family from Syria. And it was a couple of weeks, but everything was donated, and so much more as well. So, for example, somebody that I had worked with like 5 or 6 years before that just called me from Costco, and she was like, hey, I downloaded a Syrian grocery list, and I got all the stuff for the family. Can I come drop it off to your house? And it kind of blew my mind that, like, just kind of putting this message out there, you know, because visiting the family was the beginning of me learning about what the needs are of somebody who's coming to the United States through the refugee resettlement program. But then posting that list online and seeing the outpouring of support and love from my friends, I learned about the interest of the people in my world, and now I know American people in general, the interest in wanting to help refugees who are starting over in this country after fleeing violence and persecution. That was 6 years ago, next month. Fast forward, here we are. Mary's List is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We have a 12-month program that is designed to support families who are resettling as refugees in the United States. And though that visit was the first family, the first Mary's List family, though I didn't know it at the time, I'm happy to report that this week we enrolled our 941st resettling family in our program. So I think it's important to know that I didn't go to school for this. I did not plan to start this organization. This was something that I discovered while I was already in the midst of what I assumed was my career. And it's important to know that even when you know, you don't ever really know. And I certainly understand that I have found my life's work through this. And I recognize now that so many things that I learned in other jobs, and when I was in college, I studied marketing. I get to use those skills, but in a way that is totally different than any job that I've ever had, because I'm so much more passionate about doing this than any other job that I've ever had. And we don't just, by the way, help people to get the stuff that they need for their apartment. That's really what we do in the first 3 months of the 12 months that somebody's in the Mary's List program. Once we have people set up in their homes that are safe and comfortable and functional for their family, we help them with so much more, including getting involved with their local community, learning English, getting on a career development track. So to avoid this kind of classic example of engineers and doctors coming to the United States and working as Uber drivers or night security, very low wage jobs that don't utilize their talent and experience and knowledge. So the 941 families, it's more than 4,000 people. So I think that it's truly an honor to be able to talk to you about this and to know that there are congregations that are focusing entire days on helping new arrivals. That's what we do every single day. And I think we have a few more minutes. I thought that we could do a short exercise together. And if you're comfortable with it, if you could close your eyes. And if you're not comfortable to close your eyes, don't worry about it. You can do this with your eyes open as well. And put your hands somewhere where they're comfortable. And I want you to picture your favorite place in your house. The place that you go when you need your cup filled. And maybe it is a favorite chair in your living room. Maybe it's your bed. Maybe it's a chair outside in your backyard. For a couple of moments, feel yourself in that place. Now I want you to tune in to the sounds around you when you're in that space. Maybe you hear people's voices or steps. Maybe you hear birds because you're outside. What does your favorite place sound like? Now I want you to picture what is around you. Are there pictures on the wall? Is it a wedding album? Is it a blanket that a favorite person made for you once? See the things that are surrounding you in your favorite place. And just enjoy this for another couple seconds. And when you're ready, you can please open your eyes. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed your relaxation. The purpose of this exercise is that home is not just a place. It is truly a feeling that we can feel in our hearts, like all of you who just went home without going home right now. Home is also the sounds. Home can be the sound of a language. Home is a smell. It is something that involves all of our senses. And so with that and knowing our connection to our home and how important it is, we can definitely put ourselves in the shoes of somebody who has had to walk away from that. Families who have resettled as refugees in the United States have sacrificed so much, and they truly have to rebuild so many connections. We can support them in this simply by looking at them in the eyes and saying, how can I help? Do we have another couple minutes?
Sure.
Yeah? Okay. I wanted to just finish by reading a letter that was written by my grandmother. Her name is Diane. I called her Bubby. She passed away in 2020. She was a huge supporter of Muri's List. From the very first family, she would just call me on a daily basis to check in on them and find out what was going on for them. About 6 months after I met that first family, she sent me this letter and asked me to give it to the family. And I'm going to read it to you today. To those who have come to the United States in search of a better life, welcome. I am an American-born woman whose grandparents came to this country from Russia in 1909. They, like you, were leaving a life of fear and repression in the hopes of finding a place where they could live in peace and safety. My grandparents came here with almost nothing except the clothing on their backs and a small suitcase. No money, education, or even knowing English. Just hope and the willingness to learn how to fit into this country. They took classes in English and worked very hard to provide for their family, just as I'm sure you do too. It was not an easy life, but they knew that if they kept working and learning, it would get better, and it did. We are living through some difficult times with the election of a new president. This was written in 2017. He has said some very terrible things about immigrants, especially Muslims. I hope that you will understand that he does not speak for all Americans. I believe that most of us are very upset with the idea that he might deport undocumented immigrants and ban Muslims from even entering our country. These are based on ridiculous ideas that are very un-American. That's not who we are. We are a country that has been refuge for millions of people like my grandparents and for you and your family. We have a blessing of living in one of the most accepting places in the world, and we have to protect that from people who would turn those away who are escaping from terrible violence in their home country. People like you are entitled to be treated with respect and to be welcomed into our communities. I hope that you will feel somewhat comforted by my words. They reflect the true feelings of everyone that I know. I encourage you to be acquainted with English, which is a very difficult language. It is vital for you to be able to speak, read, write, and communicate in English so you can find your way around and be able to express your needs to the people who care about you. Again, welcome to this country that I hope that you will call home. Thank you.
Mary, stay up here just for a minute. We would like to open up a Q&A. Any questions that people have for Mary, for Frank, or for Angela on this topic? And Tracy will pass the microphone if we have a few questions. I'd like to know, Mary, how would we find you on social media?
Oh, yeah. You can find Mary's List. Should I come here? Yeah. So if you would like to keep up with what Mary's List is doing with families here in SoCal and across the country, you can follow us we're on Facebook, on Instagram, and Twitter, and it's just Mary's List, MIRYSLAST. And if you go to our website, which is myrislist.org, you can put your email in there, and we have a newsletter. We do not spam people. We send it out every 2 weeks, featuring 5 families who need our help. So there's a few ways that you can stay updated. Yeah.
Okay, hi. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And I loved hearing your whole speech. But I had a question about the immigrants. Do you guys have connections with legal services for people too?
So that's a great question. It's about whether we provide legal services for our families. So actually, families who are coming to the U.S. as refugees through the State Department's refugee admissions program, they are coming here with permission from the U.S. government. They have visas to live here, work here. They have rights, the same rights as every American person. They also have a path to citizenship, which is about 5 years until they can get a green card. So these are future voters. However, it is not uncommon that families have been separated by the system. So for example, one of my colleagues, there's 18 people that work at Mary's List, and more than half of those folks have graduated from our program. One of my colleagues, his name is Roman, he's here with his two of his 3 children. His wife and their daughter are still in Afghanistan, and their visas were not accepted. Many families have to make the extraordinarily difficult choice of separation or potentially giving up their spot. And so the role of immigration attorneys there is to actually help to reunite the families. And that is something that we work with a lot of very helpful, wonderful pro bono attorneys that just kind of jump in to help using their talent and knowledge.
Since there are no more questions, I have a PSA. Maureen and I are working with the wonderful staff at Mary's List and putting together another list for a family. We should have it shortly, and I'll let you know.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for your leadership and helping to involve more people in your community to surround families. I want to mention that for families who are supported by Mary's List, and we're making lists for them the experience for them is often that they are living in an empty apartment, or mostly empty apartment, and then they make a list with somebody on our team, and then behind the scenes there are helpers who are basically acting as agents, PR representatives for that family's list, making sure that it gets shared out. And so the family will, within a week, open up their door and there's mountains of boxes. And because items that are sent to families, they go directly to the family's door. And each box will contain a note for them from the person who sent the gift. And don't skip that part, because when you get the list, you're going to have the chance to write a gift message with what goes inside that box. And so it's really not just about the thing, because, a box of tea, some new socks, how much, it's less than $5. But the feeling that there are people that care about you and prioritize your well-being and your comfort and your kids' comfort or your kids' education. Send someone a backpack. This is a message that actually we can almost undo some of the very toxic messaging that folks in migration are hearing about the way American people feel about refugees. And it is obviously not any of our fault that those are the messages out there in the world, but we can remind families that they do have friends out here, that they are wanted, and that their needs are important.
Great. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Angela, can you come on up and do a reading for us?
Thank you so much for the work and the inspiration this morning. This is written by Jessica Vasquez Torres, who's an interfaith worker in justice. So here is the reading. Source of justice, who's known by many names, let us not swerve from the path that leads us to a just and equitable relationship. Open our eyes that we may see the immigrant and undocumented, whose labor enables and sustains our living. Give us the courage to stand with those crossing our borders, escaping economic oppression, political persecution, and violence, seeking work to support their families, aspiring to participate in the bounty of creation. Give us the strength to confront the prejudice and intolerance of those who are fearful, and respond by closing our borders to those who sojourn, seeking life, safety, opportunity. Give us the will to leave behind the safety of our sanctuaries and temples and other places of worship, and claim our place in the movement to transform creation, that our voice, our heart, our spirit will join the voice, heart, and spirit of all who demand to live with respect, dignity, justice, and peace. Source of direction, who is known by many names, in our daily living, let us be guided by the highest estimate of worth and dignity of every person, regardless of their legal status. And let us not forget that creation is founded on justice, and that we have the moral responsibility to bring forth justice into these times. May it be so.
Thank you, Angela. We have now reached the point of our offertory, and just wanted to say that the purpose of this church is to encourage all who gather here to grow more generous in spirit and in action. This is the great end of all the world's faith traditions, to bring the human being closer to the divine by acts of creation and compassion. We now take an offering that allows us to exercise that all-important generosity of spirit, an offer that will support this self-supporting church and its ministries. The gifts of this congregation will be most gratefully received. Please join me for the affirmation of gratitude, and you will find the words in your order of service. Let us be grateful when we are able to give, for many do not have that privilege. Let us be grateful for all those who share their gifts, for we are enriched by their giving. And let us also be grateful even for our needs, so that we may experience the generosity of others. Our closing hymn, Wo Ya Ya. Yeah? Okay. Wo Ya Ya. Wo Ya Ya.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will.
Thank you. Tracy, can I have you come on up here? We'll do a two-part closing words. This church is dedicated to the proposition that behind all of our differences and beneath all of our diversity, there is a unity that makes us one and binds us forever together, in spite of time and death and the space between the stars. We pause in silent witness to that unity.
May the blessing of love be upon you. May love's peace abide within you. May love's presence illuminate your hearts now and forevermore. So be it. Amen. Shalom. Salam. Namaste, and blessed be. And now our service truly begins.
Remain for our postlude.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. Above us, only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. A brotherhood of people. Imagine all the people, yes, living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. No, I'm not. I hope someday you will join us, and the world will be as one, and the world could live as one, and we could be free as one.
Great to see Abraham back in the room.
It's great to be back.
Don't forget the congregational meeting, about 5 minutes. Stretch your legs, come back here, and we need you to vote. Thank you.